Welcome in to Crystal Ball College Football. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and how about the Kansas State Wildcats? They knocked off Oklahoma this week. We're more so going to talk about Oklahoma in this one. We will talk a little bit about the game, of course, and kind of what's next for the Sooners, right? And, I had to talk about them this week because last week they were my team of the week, had the big win over Nebraska, came into this game a 13.5-point favorite, and lost in Norman. And Kansas State has given them problems in the past. I thought, going into this game, based on what we'd seen from Oklahoma, that maybe that would change. That was not the case. That was not the case at all in this game. So I'm going to go through this, talk about some of my biggest takeaways, and just kind of where the Sooners are at now, in the grand scheme of things in the Big 12 and, of course, the national landscape as well. So for me, when you go through the box score, it's kind of deceiving. But I think there were a couple things that were the difference. The absolute difference makers here. So the first one is the Oklahoma defense. They'd been forcing turnovers, creating havoc, meaning getting sacks, getting tackles for loss, and really just being a nuisance for every team they've played. But in this game, 4 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, only 4 hurries, and they created 0 turnovers. It regressed, and it regressed back to the mean. And so now you're left sitting there, okay, so what is Oklahoma's defense? Are they the team that's going to force all this havoc, or are they going to have problems later on in the season? I'll get to that in a minute. So they also lost a penalty battle. 11 for 87 is what they had. Kansas State was only 6 for 37 yards. So lost that by 50 yards. Significant difference to an extent. If you watch the game, there were a couple calls that were pretty unfavorable, but nothing that was egregious, nothing that changed the outcome of the game, at least in my eyes. The third down battle was another area that was just, it was tough to overcome. Kansas State was 8 of 17, just a little bit below 50% there. Oklahoma was 4 of 13. Not good at all. And if you went back and watched that game, I think that's where the game was lost. A couple plays here or there that Dylan Gabriel missed a couple throws. The one in particular to Drake Stoops, I really felt like they needed that one to convert. It went right through his hands, but the throw was off target. The throw needed to hit him in the numbers. He was wide open. He missed him, and I felt like that was kind of a bigger one just with the flow of the game and where things were trending at that moment. Just kind of looking around. Actually, that was a 4th down one, the one that I'm talking about. That was their only miss there, and again, that was just a massive one that stands out, but still 4 of 13, 1 of 2 4th down conversions as well. Not great. Not getting the job done. So as far as takeaways go, watching this game, it was very apparent to me that there is still one thing that this team is building towards. And I know Brent Venables came in and he's establishing a culture of physicality. He absolutely is. We saw it during his time at Clemson. There's no doubt about it. He expects this team to be the most physical team on the field every Saturday. They were not that this Saturday. Kansas State was. And I think that, my viewpoint was that Oklahoma was going to come into this year and probably, see a step back at times, go 10-2, still a great year, but I did feel like they'd take a little bit of a step back. And I think watching this game defensively, there still are issues where Lincoln Riley, this former staff, they came in and a lot of their culture was about finesse. They had a lot of great skill position guys. They had a lot of guys on defense that, were just trying to create turnovers and create havoc, but they weren't the most physical team most weeks, especially on the defense side. Offensively, their offensive line has always been physical. I'm specifically talking about the defense, though. And in this game, I felt like you saw a little bit of that former culture. And that's not Brent Venables' fault. Like, this is year 1. We're only 4 games in. This is going to change throughout the year. This is going to change during his time at Oklahoma. But in this specific game, they were beaten up front by Kansas State's offensive line and by the fact that Adrian Martinez is a big-bodied quarterback who's athletic, who can run through arm tackles, a really good running back that's shifty and creates missed tackles as well. And you saw it. And I think as that game progressed, it was basically any 4th down and 2 or any 3rd down and 3, you felt like Kansas State was absolutely going to get the first down. That's just what it turned into. And Kansas State just made those plays. They got physical up front, and they moved bodies. And to me, that was a huge difference in this game. Again, that is going to change. I would also say, Adrian Martinez, he's a guy that they couldn't have prepared for, to be honest. I don't think there's anyone on this roster who could give them the looks that Adrian Martinez did on this day. He had not been good throughout the year, especially throwing the football, and even running the ball. He was a little indecisive, but in this game, he was very decisive, and he knew where to go with the football. He knew when to run, when not to run. And while OU had a couple chances to create turnovers and they were unable to, he was very efficient on the day. So props to him. Kansas State, 49 carries, 275 yards, 4 touchdowns. They were able to run the football consistently, as I mentioned. I would also say a big factor in this one was their tight end, Ben Sinnett. He had 4 catches for 80 yards. That doubles his career total. They came out there with the tight end. They ran the ball physically. They threw the ball to their tight end. He made a big impact as well. It was just physical football all over the field from Kansas State. And you got to remember, they were coming off of a loss. And I have a feeling that could be a consistent trend throughout the Big 12. Teams coming off losses typically do very well in this conference. And that's what happened. I think Kansas State felt embarrassed by their loss to Tulane. They came in, played much better against OU, found a way to win. Other takeaway here, and this is more one where I'm kind of looking at the grand scheme of things of, how's Oklahoma going to win games? How are they going to lose games going forward? I had a huge issue with this. So Oklahoma threw for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Dylan Gabriel threw for that. 0 interceptions. Matched with 230 yards on 34 carries. That's 6.5 yards per carry. So you're telling me their quarterback goes 330, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. They run the ball for 6.5 yards per carry, 0 turnovers, and they lose? That's shocking. That's absolutely shocking, guys, and not something that I felt like was feasible going into this game. It makes me think, this might have been a fluke. Might have been. But on the flip side, Kansas State racked up the yardage as well. So it's hard to really point to it being a fluke. But I do think offensively, the fact that they were 4 of 13, Oklahoma that is, on third down, despite how successful they were on every other down and how successful they were running the football and throwing the football, how efficient they were, it's just pretty crazy. And those third downs, they can be really pesky and they can lose you games. And I kind of think, looking back, that's exactly what lost Oklahoma this game. And it's really unfortunate because the numbers were all there offensively. They just couldn't get the stops when they needed to, and they couldn't convert when they needed to as well. So now they head into this game against TCU, undefeated TCU, on the road in Fort Worth. The game is 67.5 is the over-under. Oklahoma's a 6.5-point favorite going into this game. And it's interesting because I was thinking about, what teams in the Big 12 could pose a similar threat, as Adrian Martinez did. And they're playing TCU, who has Max Duggan, who's another big quarterback, can run a little bit, will get outside the pocket, but will also move the chains for you at the quarterback position. So they're going to get another look at a pretty mobile quarterback and a quarterback that's going to try to be physical. They have Kendre Miller at running back as well. So TCU is going to try to get physical with Oklahoma once again, but I think Oklahoma is going to be more prepared for it. And I know it's on the road. I know this will be a challenge, no doubt about it. But I think Brent Venables is going to flip a switch here. And coming off of a loss, I expect them to play much better defensively. They'll give up some points, but I think they'll be much better. And offensively, they're going to continue to roll. TCU still has some issues there. They gave up a lot of points to SMU last week. They gave up a lot of yards to SMU as well. So I think it'll be a somewhat close game, but I'm going to take the Sooners to win this next one, 37-30. That means they will cover as well. Big bounce back opportunity for Oklahoma, and one that they absolutely need. If they want to win the Big 12, you got to win this game, in my eyes. So they need to bounce back after a loss. So that's it for Oklahoma. Later on in the week, I'm going to talk a little bit about Texas. I'll have my best bets at the end of the week. And I'll have a few more episodes as well, just talking about the great week of college football that we just saw. So thanks for listening to Crystal Ball College Football.